The fireplace in the mountain lodge lobby roared with heat that Sofia Morales could not feel. Flames licked orange and gold against the stone, casting shadows that danced across the polished wood floors, but her hands trembled anyway, and the trembling had nothing to do with cold. 11:47 on a Friday night in January. Outside, the blizzard had teeth. Snow battered the tall windows in sheets so thick you could barely see the parking lot beyond. Wind screamed through the eaves like something wounded. The glass itself seemed to shudder with each gust, frost creeping across the panes from corner to corner, white fingers spreading across a surface already half frozen. Emma clung to Sofia's leg, her small fingers gripping the fabric of the black and white maid uniform, the uniform that marked her mother as the woman who scrubbed other people's dirt from their floors. "You and that brat are out in 5 minutes or I drag you both into the snow myself." Catherine Mercer stood in front of them, silhouetted against the fireplace, her designer wool coat the color of burgundy wine, the kind of coat that cost more than everything Sofia owned. Cashmere, probably. Italian, maybe. A gold bracelet caught the light on her wrist, and beneath it, her skin showed the kind of even tan that came from winter vacations in places where people like Sofia could never afford to go. Catherine's finger pointed toward the door like a blade. "I don't care if you freeze. You missed your cleaning quota 3 days in a row. Out. Now." Her voice had the precise cruelty of someone who had never wanted for anything in her life. Every word was a small knife, and Sofia felt each one cut. Sofia's fingers moved to her pocket instinctively. $78. That was all. $78 and a photograph of a man whose face she could barely remember anymore because 8 years was a long time to hold on to a memory when survival demanded every ounce of your strength. "Please," Sofia said. Her voice came out like a candle in the wind, barely there, already flickering. "Just until morning. My daughter, she's 6 years old. There's a blizzard. We can't. Not my problem." Catherine turned away, her heels clicking against the marble floor with the sound of a clock counting down. Each footstep was a door closing, a chance evaporating, a future collapsing into the frozen night outside. Emma began to cry. Not loudly. Her crying was small and contained, the way children cry when they have already learned that nobody listens. Her fingers dug deeper into Sofia's uniform. "Mommy, I'm scared." Sofia's hand found her daughter's dark hair and stroked it, a gesture that meant nothing and everything. "I know, baby. I know. The security guard can help you with your things," Catherine called over her shoulder, already disappearing into the back office, already forgetting them. "You'll be gone in 5 minutes. If you're not, I'll have him remove you both. Understand?" The lobby fell into a silence broken only by the wind and the sound of Emma's breathing and Sofia's heartbeat, which seemed to be happening in her throat now, choking her. The car. She had to think about the car. The car had broken down 3 miles down the mountain highway, dead in the snow, wouldn't start, wouldn't do anything but sit there like a corpse while the engine ticked and cooled. She had called AAA but they couldn't reach her for 2 hours at least. The dispatcher had said that. 2 hours. Minimum. And that was before the blizzard had gotten worse, before the roads had become impassable, before the world outside had turned into something that was trying to kill her. Her phone was at 2% battery. She had no family in Nevada. No family anywhere really, not anymore. Her mother was dead. Her sister had stopped answering calls 5 years ago. She had no one except Emma and this job and the $78 that was supposed to last until her next paycheck on the 15th, which was 12 days away. 12 days. She couldn't survive 12 days on nothing if she was out on the street tonight. Sofia walked toward the door because there was nothing else to do. Walking toward the door was the only option Catherine Mercer had left her. The wind hit the glass harder as she approached it, as if the storm itself was trying to keep her inside, to save her, to warn her that what waited outside was not survivable. She pushed the door open. Cold air rushed in like a living thing, like a predator, and she gasped because she couldn't help it. Emma gasped too. The night was so dark, so complete, so utterly devoid of light that it seemed to have weight and mass. The snow fell in such dense curtains that the parking lot beyond was barely visible. There was only white and darkness and wind that bit and screamed. Sofia pulled Emma close and stepped out into it. The door swung shut behind them with a sound like the closing of a coffin. For a moment, mother and daughter stood on the concrete porch of the mountain lodge, and Sofia could feel the temperature already dropping from the cold of the building to the cold of the world. Her breath came out in clouds. Emma's breath came out in clouds. The snow was already beginning to accumulate on their shoulders, on their hair, on the edges of Sofia's uniform, which was not meant for outdoors, was not meant for survival, was meant only for cleaning other people's messes. But what she did not know, standing there in the January darkness, was that somewhere on the mountain highway below, engines were approaching through the blizzard. Black SUVs, 7 of them in a careful line, moving slowly because even the drivers who had navigated every kind of terrain understood that a mountain road in a whiteout was not a place you rushed. In the lead vehicle, a man sat with his hands folded, his dark eyes fixed on the road ahead, and something in his chest was about to shatter in a way that would change everything. Now let us go back to the beginning. Let us go back 8 years, to the night Sofia Morales made the first choice that would lead her here, to this mountain lodge, to this moment, to the edge of the world with her daughter's hand in hers and $78 between her and oblivion. 8 years earlier, on a different kind of winter night, in a basement apartment in Reno, Sofia had been lying on a mattress with no sheets, listening to footsteps above her head, to the footsteps of the city, to the footsteps of people with choices, with futures, with lives that contained more than pain and waiting, when she finally understood that dying slowly was the same as dying quickly. The difference was only in how much you suffered along the way. 8 years before the blizzard, Sofia Morales stood behind the blackjack table at the Venetian Casino in Las Vegas, her feet already aching at 9 in the evening, with 7 more hours of her shift remaining. She was 24 years old, with dark hair pulled so tight it made her temples throb, and eyes the color of chestnuts that had learned not to hope for much. Her uniform was black and white, immaculate, and it hung on a frame that had grown thinner each month since she arrived in the city with 2 suitcases and a mother's prayer stitched into the lining of her jacket. The casino floor hummed with the sound of machines and voices and the specific kind of desperation that only exists where money and darkness meet. The air smelled like cigarette smoke and cologne and the metallic tang of chips changing hands. Sofia's smile was practiced and empty, the smile of someone who had learned that kindness to strangers was a tool, not a feeling. At the table near the eastern windows, a man in a tailored charcoal suit caught her attention. He was 38, with olive skin and dark hair silvered at the temples, and something about the way he held himself, shoulders back, jaw set, every movement deliberate, made the other players defer to him without speaking. Douglas Hale had money and manners and a voice that carried the weight of someone accustomed to being obeyed. He played carefully, won consistently, and when Sofia brought him his 3rd scotch, he looked at her directly, not through her, and something in his expression shifted. "You have beautiful eyes," he said. "Has anyone told you that?" Sofia had been told many things by many men in this casino, things that lived in the category of remarks designed to diminish. But this felt different. This felt like being seen. 3 days later, he was waiting for her at the employee exit. He had flowers, red roses, a dozen of them, expensive ones wrapped in paper that cost more than Sofia's hourly wage, and he presented them to her as though offering a gift to royalty. His name was Douglas Hale. He owned property in the city. He wanted to know everything about her. The courtship happened in fast forward, the way dangerous things often do. Dinners at restaurants where the waiters knew his name. A weekend trip to California where he paid for everything and asked nothing except that she stay close to him. He called her every morning. He texted her photographs of flowers. He told her that she was wasting her intelligence at a casino, that she deserved better, that with him, she would have everything. 3 months into their relationship, he told her he loved her. She believed him because she wanted to. She was 24 and lonely, and someone was finally treating her like she mattered. The first time Douglas hit her, it was over a dropped glass. They were in his apartment, a place he had moved her into without discussing it, and she had knocked a drinking glass from the kitchen counter. It fell to the tile floor and shattered. The sound of it breaking must have triggered something in him, some fracture in whatever he kept contained beneath the charm. His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, twisted it hard enough that she felt the bones grind together. His face changed. The softness vanished. In its place came something cold, something that looked at her with contempt. "You are careless," he said. His voice sounded like it was coming from somewhere deep underground. Careless women need to be taught to pay attention. He held her wrist until the skin turned purple, then released her and walked away, leaving her standing in the kitchen with her hand throbbing and her mind remaking the entire 3 months into a story she had misunderstood. It was not the last time. The hitting escalated. A slap across the face when she mentioned her mother. A punch to her ribs when she came home 15 minutes late from work. He told her it was because he loved her, because he could not bear the thought of her looking at other men, because she made him crazy with her carelessness and her stupidity. He said these things while holding her face in his hands. He cried while saying them. She believed that if she just tried harder to be perfect, the hitting would stop. By her 26th year, she lived in a basement apartment that Douglas rented under his own name. The windows were narrow and set high in the walls, so the sunlight came in pale and distant. She was no longer allowed to work. He provided money for groceries, but he controlled the amount, and she had to account for every dollar. He checked her phone. He accompanied her everywhere outside the apartment. He told her that this was what love meant, that normal men were weak, that she should thank him for caring enough to keep her close. On a Tuesday night in February, Douglas came home drunk. Sofia was in the kitchen preparing dinner. He sat at the table and watched her, and when she mentioned that she wanted to visit her mother, that her mother was sick, that she had not seen her in 18 months, something twisted in his face. "You want to leave me," he said. It was not a question. "No," Sofia whispered. "I just want to." He stood without finishing her sentence. He was holding a cigarette. He brought it to her shoulder blade and pressed it into her skin. The pain was immediate and complete. She screamed. He pressed another one lower, on her back, and then another, and another, 5 burning circles of agony across her spine. He told her to stop screaming or he would do it again. She stopped. He locked her in the bathroom for 6 hours with the lights off. When he let her out, he held her and apologized and promised it would never happen again, and she believed him because believing him was easier than facing the truth of what she had become. But the cigarette burns never healed properly. They became scars, raised and white, a permanent map of the night she finally broke. 3 months later, Sofia stole $200 from Douglas's wallet while he slept. She packed a backpack with the clothes that would fit, and a photograph of her mother taken years before, and she walked out of that basement apartment on a Sunday morning when the city was still quiet. She made it to the Greyhound station downtown. She bought a ticket to Denver. She sat in the waiting area with her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She was free for 9 hours exactly. It was in the station bathroom that Catherine Mercer found her. She was a woman in her early 50s, dressed in clothes that whispered money, a cream-colored blazer that fit perfectly, jewelry that caught the fluorescent light, hair styled with the kind of precision that suggested regular visits to expensive salons. She smiled at Sofia with what looked like genuine kindness. "You look like you have been through something difficult," Catherine said. It was not a question. Sofia, exhausted and terrified that Douglas would walk through those bathroom doors any second, said nothing. "I run a property in Colorado," Catherine continued. "A beautiful mountain lodge. I need housekeeping staff. The work is honest, the pay is decent, and the location is remote enough that you could disappear for a while and think about what you want your life to be. Interested?" Sofia was interested the way a drowning person is interested in a rope. They left within the hour. Catherine drove a black SUV with leather seats and tinted windows. The highway stretched out before them, and as the distance between Sofia and Las Vegas grew, her body began to release its constant state of tension. For the first time in 2 years, she felt like she might survive. The lodge appeared on the landscape as the sun was setting, a massive structure of stone and timber nestled against the slope of a mountain, surrounded by pine trees and vast emptiness. Catherine gave her a room in the basement, told her that cleaning staff would share the space, explained the schedule and the rules. The pay was $70 per week after deductions. Sofia calculated quickly, $3 a day. Less than minimum wage, but she told herself it was temporary, that she would save what she could, that she would figure out the next step once she caught her breath. She learned the answer to the next step slowly, piece by piece, as the reality of the lodge became clear. Catherine's men ensured that no one left without permission. The phones were monitored. The identification documents were kept in Catherine's office. When one of the housekeeping staff, a woman named Rosa, tried to walk away on her second week, 2 men in dark suits brought her back within 4 hours, and Sofia heard her screaming in a room down the hallway. After that, no one asked about leaving. Sofia cleaned rooms from 6 in the morning until 8 at night. She mopped hallways. She scrubbed bathrooms. She changed linens on beds where wealthy guests had slept, and she thought about how nothing had really changed, how she had simply exchanged one prison for another, and how this particular prison had the terrible advantage of being her own choice. On a November afternoon, while Sofia was cleaning the third-floor hallway with a mop that had been used so many times the head was frayed and ineffective, she heard a child crying in the stairwell. It was the kind of crying that came from a small body in genuine distress, not the theatrical crying of a tantrum. Sofia abandoned her mop and moved toward the sound. In the stairwell between the 3rd and 4th floors, she found a girl, no more than 3 years old, with curly brown hair and a sundress with no shoes. The child was crying so hard that her entire body was shaking. "Hello, sweet one," Sofia said, and her voice sounded different than it had sounded in months, gentler, more real. "Are you lost?" The girl looked up and saw Sofia's face, and her crying intensified because she was a small child and strangers were dangerous and everything about this moment was wrong. But Sofia sat down on the stair beside her and waited. She did not touch her. She did not press. She simply sat, which was sometimes all that anyone needed. After several minutes, the girl's crying slowed. She said her name was Emma. She was staying at the lodge with her foster family, but they had let her wander, and she had taken the stairs instead of the hallway, and now she did not know where they were. Sofia's hands moved on instinct. She dried Emma's tears with the corner of her apron. She took her hand, which was small and warm and felt like holding the future. She walked Emma through the hallways until they found the family, a middle-aged couple in one of the upstairs suites, looking frantic and guilty. Sofia returned the child to them without asking for thanks, though the foster mother offered profuse gratitude, offered a tip that Sofia refused, offered prayers for her kindness. Emma reached for Sofia as they parted. Her small hand stretched out across the space between them, fingers curling, reaching for connection the way children do when they recognize something true. That night, in her basement room in the darkness, Sofia took off her uniform and examined the scars on her back in the mirror of a small compact mirror she had stolen. The burns were white now, permanently raised, a landscape of cruelty written on her skin. She touched them and thought about Emma's small hand reaching for her, and something shifted in her chest, something that felt like breaking and rebuilding at the same time. She whispered a promise to the darkness, "I will find a way out. For both of us." The footsteps of the other women echoed in the hallway as they returned from their shifts. Sofia lay on her cot and stared at the ceiling, and for the first time since arriving at the lodge, she allowed herself to believe that escaping was not just possible, it was necessary, it was inevitable, it was the only thing that mattered anymore. 3 years had passed since Sofia Morales held Emma's small hand in that dark hallway of the mountain lodge. 3 years of stolen moments, of whispered promises made in the darkness of her basement room, of saving every dollar that Catherine Mercer did not steal from her. $78. That was everything she had managed to hide, 1s and 5s and a crumpled 10, tucked inside an empty cleaning solution bottle in the utility closet where Catherine never looked. $78 and the growing certainty that time was running out like water through her fingers. Emma was 6 years old now, living in a foster home 30 miles down the mountain in a valley town called Millbrook. The caseworker, a thin woman named Mrs. Chen, had called Sofia 3 days ago with news that crushed like a stone dropped from a cliff. The foster family was relocating to Arizona. They were leaving in 7 days. Emma would go with them unless Sofia could provide proof of stable income and housing. The caseworker had been kind but clinical about the numbers: $85,000 in verified annual income, or a legal guarantor with significant assets. Sofia made $8,000 a year. Catherine paid her in cash and reported her as room and board only, no documentation, no paper trail, no proof she existed outside these walls. She had visited Emma that Friday morning before her shift, sitting in the foster parents' living room, listening to Emma read aloud from a picture book. The child's voice was clear and confident. She was learning, thriving, becoming someone who would have real opportunities. That was the only thing that mattered. But when Sofia left, Emma had clung to her. The child's small arms wrapped around Sofia's neck and she had whispered, "Will you always come back?" Sofia had held her and lied beautifully. "Always," she promised. "I will always come back." That night, Sofia's hands moved on autopilot through her shift. She cleaned rooms on the 3rd floor, changed linens, scrubbed bathrooms until her fingers bled. The lodge was half empty, guests scattered across the mountain for the season. Catherine was in her office, counting money and arranging shipments of the controlled substances that moved through the lodge like currency. Sofia kept her head down, her movement small and invisible. At 9 o'clock, her shift ended. Sofia changed out of her uniform in the staff bathroom and walked to the utility closet. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She pulled down the cleaning solution bottle and poured the $78 into her palm. Then she grabbed the duffel bag she had hidden behind the emergency supplies, 2 changes of clothes, a toothbrush, a photograph of her late husband, Marcus, from before everything fell apart, from before she had made every wrong choice that led her here. Her fingers traced his face. Marcus would have fought. Marcus would have moved heaven and earth for Emma. But Marcus was dead, and Sofia was all Emma had. The lodge's old pickup truck was parked behind the kitchen, keys hanging in the office. Sofia had watched where Catherine kept them. She had watched everything for 3 years, had learned the patterns of power and routine. Her hand shook as she took the keys. This was theft. This was abandonment. This was the line between surviving and breaking. She drove down the mountain with both hands locked on the wheel, the engine grinding beneath the hood. Snow was beginning to fall, small flakes that caught in the headlights. The highway curved and descended and curved again. Millbrook appeared like a scattered handful of lights in the darkness, a town of maybe 3,000 people, houses with warm windows, families doing ordinary things. The foster home was a 2-story colonial on Birch Street, painted blue, with a fence around a small yard. Sofia pulled into the driveway and cut the engine. She left the truck running. The back door was open, like it always was on Friday nights when the Hendersons went to their church group. Sofia had timed this 3 weeks ago, had memorized the schedule, had been planning this moment since the caseworker's phone call. She moved through the house like a ghost. Emma was in her bedroom, wearing pink pajamas with stars, reading a book by the glow of a nightlight shaped like a moon. When she saw Sofia, her face transformed. "Mommy." She called her mommy sometimes, though Sofia had never asked her to. The word destroyed Sofia a little each time. She pulled Emma from the bed, ignoring the child's questions, ignoring the voice in her head screaming that this was wrong, that this was criminal, that she was taking a child in the night like something in a horror story. "We're going on an adventure," Sofia whispered, wrapping Emma in a blanket. "A special surprise. Can you be brave and quiet for me?" Emma nodded, her small hand finding Sofia's. They moved through the house and out into the winter night. The truck smelled like rust and old grease. Sofia buckled Emma into the passenger seat and drove, the headlights cutting through the snow like a blade through paper. Emma slept against the window, her breathing even, trusting. Sofia's foot pressed harder on the accelerator. They were 3 miles down the mountain when smoke began to pour from under the hood. The engine coughed and died in a long, mechanical groan. Sofia coasted to the shoulder, her hands white-knuckled on the wheel. The engine was gone. Dead. The snow was falling harder now, the kind of snow that came in November and killed people who were unprepared. She looked at her phone. 2% battery. No signal. The temperature was dropping. The wind was picking up. She wrapped Emma in her coat and they began to walk, though walking became stumbling, became barely forward motion. Emma cried from the cold. Sofia's breath came in ragged gasps. Her thin-made shoes had no traction on the ice. The highway was empty. The mountains pressed in from both sides, dark and immense, and they were so small, so impossibly small, and Sofia had made a terrible mistake. She had taken a child from safety and now they were going to die on this mountain because she had thought she could save them with $78 and desperation. Half a mile from the truck, Sofia's legs gave out. She sank to her knees on the shoulder of the highway, Emma in her arms, the child's small body shaking violently. Sofia closed her eyes. She had failed. She had destroyed everything. And now? Headlights appeared through the snow. Multiple headlights. A convoy of 3 black SUVs emerged from the white wall like something from a dream. They slowed as they approached. Doors opened. 4 men in black tactical gear stepped out, hands resting on weapons with the casual confidence of people who knew how to use them. Sofia's breath caught. She was about to be arrested. She was about to lose Emma anyway, but worse, so much worse. Then the center vehicle's back door opened. The man who emerged was tall, perhaps 6'2", with a kind of presence that made the night smaller. His coat was black wool, expensive in a way that made clear it cost more than Sofia's annual salary. Beneath it was a suit the color of storm clouds, tailored with precision. His hair was dark with silver at the temples. A scar ran along his jawline like a signature written in white. But it was his eyes that stopped her breathing. They were the color of winter itself, gray and unforgiving, eyes that had looked into darkness and refused to flinch. Luca Bianchi. Sofia knew his name the way everyone in the mountains knew names that whispered through the night. She knew what he was. She knew what the black SUVs and the men and the presents meant. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that this was the end. Luca looked at her and Emma collapsed on the highway's shoulder, half buried in snow. Something flickered across his face, something that changed the architecture of his features. Without a word, he removed his coat. It was a cashmere coat, Sofia would later learn, worth more than 6 months of her salary. He wrapped it around Emma like she was made of crystal. "Get them in the vehicle," he told Marco, his voice deep and solid like an oath. Now. The SUV was warm. Leather seats. The engine running, heat blasting through vents, the window fogging with condensation. Sofia sat in the back with Emma while Luca occupied the seat across from them, studying her face with an intensity that felt like being X-rayed. Marco drove. The storm raged outside, but inside there was shelter. Emma fell asleep against Sofia's shoulder, her breathing deepening into the unconsciousness of complete exhaustion. Silence filled the space between them. Then Luca spoke, his eyes never leaving Sofia's face. "Where were you going?" Sofia's throat was locked. "Town," she whispered. "We were just going to town." Luca's eyes narrowed fractionally. He knew. Of course he knew. Men like Luca Bianchi could read the truth written on people's skin like a map of everything they had ever done. "Who are you running from?" Sofia could not speak. She looked down at Emma, at the child's small face peaceful in sleep, and said nothing. "I know what running looks like," Luca said quietly. "I know what desperation looks like. I have seen it many times." He paused, and the silence stretched between them like a living thing. "Then, take them to the estate." The words were directed to Marco, but his eyes remained on Sofia. Sofia's blood turned to ice. "No. Please. Not back to the lodge. Anywhere but there." Something hardened in Luca's expression. "Why?" She could not answer. She could not say the things Catherine Mercer had done, could not name the women locked in rooms, could not speak the reality of what the lodge truly was. So she said nothing, and Luca studied her in the darkness, and the SUV continued down the mountain toward whatever came next. The estate appeared through the snow like a manor house from another era. Stone and timber rose 3 stories into the night, surrounded by dark pines. Warm light burned in every window. A circular driveway contained a fountain now frozen, and the property sprawled across what must have been 50 acres of mountain land. A staff member appeared the moment the SUV stopped. A housekeeper named Maria, gray-haired and kind, took Emma to a guest room on the 2nd floor. Sofia followed, refusing to leave Emma's side. The room was enormous, with a 4-poster bed and windows overlooking the valley. Soft light glowed from wall sconces. Maria brought warm pajamas and removed Emma's wet clothes with gentle efficiency. Sofia helped, moving like someone underwater. Within minutes, Emma was asleep under heavy blankets, her breathing steady, her small hand curled around the stuffed animal Maria had provided. Sofia sat in a chair beside the bed and did not move. 2 hours later, Maria brought her tea and soup. Sofia could not eat. The cup rattled against the saucer when she tried to lift it. She was still wearing her wet-maid uniform, still shaking, still unable to believe she was anywhere other than the cold highway, still unable to believe they had survived. Luca appeared in the doorway without knocking. "Leave us," he told Maria, who retreated with the practiced discretion of someone who understood power. He closed the door and sat across from Sofia. The room smelled of wood smoke from the fireplace. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Luca asked again, "Who are you running from?" Sofia broke like glass. The words came pouring out: the lodge, Catherine Mercer, the women, the impossible choice. Emma's foster family was leaving. She had 7 days to find $85,000 or lose the child forever. She had stolen a truck and $78 and an idea built on prayer and desperation. She did not tell him about Douglas or the scars. Some things were too broken to speak aloud. Luca listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said simply, "You will stay here. Both of you." Sofia's head snapped up. "Why?" Luca's jaw tightened. Something moved behind his eyes, a current of something old and painful. "I have my reasons," he said. Then he stood and left her alone with Emma sleeping in the darkness. The morning brought sunlight and the terrible clarity of everything Sofia had done. She woke in the chair with her neck stiff and her hand still shaking. Emma was awake, exploring the room, touching the silks and the paintings and the carefully curated luxury of a world she had never been allowed to occupy. A knock. Maria entered with clothes, jeans, a sweater, boots that fit. Maria explained with the gentleness of someone who had seen suffering, "Mr. Bianchi said you would stay as long as you need. He has arranged for the child to be enrolled in the local school. A lawyer will handle the custody paperwork." Sofia was speechless. Over the next 3 days, the impossible continued. Sofia and Emma were given a cottage on the estate grounds, small, warm, their own space. Sofia tried to help with chores, tried to earn her place, but Maria stopped her each time. "You are a guest," she said, and something in the way she said it made clear this was not negotiable. Luca was everywhere and nowhere. Sofia saw him only in passing, moving through the estate in meetings with men in suits, Marco always at his right hand, and another man called Dario who watched everything with the careful attention of someone counting threats. They spoke in low voices about business, about shipments, about things Sofia did not want to understand. On the 4th day, Sofia found him in his office. The room was all dark wooden floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the valley. Luca sat behind an antique desk, surrounded by papers, looking like a general surveying a battlefield of numbers and consequences. He looked up when she entered. He did not seem surprised. "Thank you," Sofia began. "For everything. But I cannot accept charity. I need to work. I need to provide for Emma myself. I need." "Work for me," he interrupted quietly. "Not as a maid. As Emma's caretaker and my estate manager. Salary, $85,000 a year. You will have your own cottage on the property, the one where you are staying. Full benefits. Emma will have everything she needs." He paused, letting the numbers sink in. "You will sign a contract and you will stay for at least 1 year. Sofia stared. The exact number. The exact amount she needed for the custody case. Why, she whispered. Why would you do this? Luca's expression hardened into something unreadable. Because I know what it is like to lose family. And I know what it is like to be powerless to stop it. He did not elaborate. Some wounds were too old to explain. The contract was signed 3 hours later in the presence of Luca's lawyer. Everything was legal and documented and real. Sofia's hands shook as she signed. Then her world exploded. Catherine Mercer appeared at the estate gates that afternoon in her Mercedes, her face twisted with fury. She demanded to see Sofia, demanded explanations, demanded the truck returned. Security called Luca. He told them to let her in. Catherine descended the foyer stairs like she owned the mountain. She was tall, immaculate, with the brittle beauty of a woman who had spent years perfecting cruelty. When she saw Luca coming down the main staircase, her face changed. Recognition flickered. Fear flickered. Luca's voice was ice. Ms. Morales works for me now. If you have a legal complaint, direct it to my attorney. He handed her a business card without looking at her face. You don't know what she is, Catherine hissed. You don't know. Leave my property, Luca said. Now. Catherine's eyes locked with Sofia's for one moment filled with venom and promise. Then she turned and left, her heels clicking against the marble like a countdown to something terrible. She made a phone call from her car, her voice tight with information. She gave an address. She gave a name. She gave everything. Sofia watched Catherine's Mercedes disappear down the driveway, and her hand moved unconsciously to her shoulder where the scars were hidden beneath her sweater. In Las Vegas, 300 miles away, a man named Douglas Hale received that phone call. And something shifted in the darkness, something that had been waiting years to move. The storm will pass and you are far stronger than you think. A Tuesday afternoon, 1 week after Catherine Mercer's Mercedes disappeared down the driveway, Sofia stood in the main house's supply office reviewing inventory sheets. The room was quiet except for the soft scratch of her pen against paper. Outside, the Nevada sun beat down on the estate grounds like a hammer. Emma was at school. The cottage where they now lived sat 50 yards behind the main residence, a small stone structure with a fireplace and a bedroom for each of them. Sofia had hung curtains she had sewn herself. For the first time in 8 years, Sofia Morales owned something. She did not own the house. But she owned the curtains. The security office called through the intercom at 2:24 in the afternoon. Sofia was reviewing staffing schedules for the dinner service when the head of security, a man named Vincent with 17 years of corporate experience before joining Luca's operation, spoke with unusual tension in his voice. Ms. Morales, there is a man at the front gate. He's claiming he needs to speak with you. He says he's your husband. The pen fell from Sofia's hand. It rolled across the desk and onto the floor. She did not move. She did not breathe. She did not ask which husband. She already knew. There was only one man in the world who would call himself hers. What did he say his name was? Sofia's voice was barely audible, like a candle in the wind. Douglas Hale. He's demanding entry. He's in a grey sedan, Nevada plates. Should we call the main house? No. Sofia stood. Her legs felt hollow. Do not call Mr. Bianchi. Turn him away. Tell him to leave the property. She hung up before Vincent could respond. She could not think. She could not move. She walked to the security office without remembering the path. The monitors showed the front gate, the long driveway, the guard station. And there, parked half on the gravel shoulder and half on the public road outside the wrought iron gate, was a grey sedan with Nevada plates. A man sat in the driver's seat. He was older than she remembered, his face harder, his hair greyer, but unmistakably him. Douglas Hale was smoking a cigarette. He was not agitated. He was patient. He was waiting. Vincent was speaking into his radio. Gate is closed. He has no entry authorization. He needs to leave the property now. Douglas did not argue. He did not drive away. He simply sat there, the cigarette smoke curling out through the open window, and he watched the gate like a man watching a door he had already decided to enter. His refusing, Vincent said quietly. "What would you like us to do?" Sofia's mouth was dry. "Let him sit. Do not engage. If he tries to force the gate, call security. But do not tell Mr. Bianchi yet." She turned away from the monitors. Her hands were shaking so badly she could not hold them still. She pressed them against her thighs. She thought about Emma at school. She thought about Emma getting off the bus, walking up the path to the cottage, finding her mother gone. She thought about the scars on her back, hidden beneath her sweater, each one a small dark map of pain that she had never shown to anyone at this estate. If Luca discovered the truth about Douglas, if he learned about the basement apartment where she had been locked away, about the cigarettes pressed into her skin, about the 8 years of running and hiding and surviving on nothing, he would see her differently. He would see her as weak. He would see her as damaged. He would see her as worthless. That night, Sofia could not eat dinner. She moved through the motions with Emma, helping her with homework, reading stories, tucking her into bed. Emma fell asleep quickly, her small hand still wrapped around the corner of her blanket. Sofia stood in the doorway for 5 minutes just watching her breathe. At 11 p.m., Sofia stepped onto the cottage's back porch. The December night was clear and brutal, the kind of cold that burned your lungs when you breathed. Stars hung sharp as diamonds above the mountains. Frost coated every surface, the railing, the steps, the wooden planks beneath her feet. Her breath came out in white clouds that disappeared into the darkness. She could see the lights from Douglas's sedan parked 300 yards down the hill on the public road. Still there. Still waiting. Still patient. She knew he would not leave. She knew he would find a way in. He always had. Locks were just suggestions to men like Douglas. Walls were just opportunities. He would wait until she was alone. He would wait until the moment when her guard was lowest. He would find her. And when he did, all of this would shatter. The cottage. The job. Luca's quiet respect. Emma's laughter at breakfast this morning when she had asked for seconds of eggs. Sofia could run again. She could take Emma and disappear into the night, just as she had done 8 years ago. She had done it once. She could do it again. She had $78 in her wallet. She had nothing else. She looked at the forest beyond the cottage, the darkness so complete it seemed solid. She could walk into that darkness and never come back. Emma would survive. Children survived. Children were survivors. Emma would learn to live without her, just as she had learned to live without a father, without a home, without anything but the clothes she was wearing and her mother's hand holding hers in the dark. Sofia's grip tightened on the porch railing. Her knuckles turned white. The cold bit her skin. She closed her eyes. She thought about Emma's laughter at breakfast. She thought about the cottage's warm kitchen with its white tile counters and the window that looked out onto the garden. She thought about the way Luca had asked her opinion yesterday about hiring a new groundskeeper, had actually listened to her answer, had implemented her suggestion. She thought about the feeling of being, for the first time in her life, seen instead of invisible. Through the cottage window, she could see the framed photograph on the mantel. Maria, one of the estate staff, had helped her print it from her phone. It showed Emma standing in front of the school gate on her first day, wearing the new dress Sofia had sewn from fabric bought with her own wages. Emma's smile was so wide it seemed to illuminate the entire image. Sofia straightened her shoulders. Her hand stopped shaking. She turned away from the darkness and walked back inside. She locked the door. She checked it twice. She would not run. Not this time. The next morning, Douglas was gone from the road. Sofia exhaled so deeply her knees almost buckled. She was so relieved she almost wept. She made Emma breakfast. She watched her daughter skip onto the school bus, her backpack bouncing, her pigtails tied with ribbon Sofia had braided herself. The bus pulled away. Sofia's shoulders dropped. She had survived another day. What she did not know was that at the same hour, Douglas was sitting across from Catherine Mercer in a diner 3 miles away. Catherine's face was tight with fury and calculation. She told him what she had learned. Sofia was working for Luca Bianchi, was living in his estate, was rising in status within his household. Catherine had made calls. She had called Douglas because she understood something critical. If Luca discovered that Sofia was married, that she belonged to another man, his protection would evaporate. Ownership changed everything in this world. Catherine smiled as she explained this. Douglas listened. By the time they left the diner, they had formed a plan. 3 days later, Sofia walked Emma home from the school bus stop. This was their routine. The bus dropped children at a main gate 500 yards from the cottage. Sofia picked Emma up every day at 3:15 in the afternoon. They walked together through the estate grounds, past the gardens and the guest house, through a small grove of pine trees where the air smelled like earth and winter. Emma held her hand. Emma talked about her day, about spelling words and a boy named Marcus who had shared his apple slices at lunch, about the teacher who read them a story about a talking rabbit. A grey sedan turned onto the path at 3:32 in the afternoon. It slowed. Sofia's stomach tightened. The car pulled directly in front of them. Catherine stepped out first, her face sharp as a blade, her eyes bright with vindication. Douglas emerged from the passenger side. He was smiling. Sofia pulled Emma closer. "Hello, Sofia," Catherine said. "So nice to see you again." Sofia spun and began walking in the opposite direction, but Douglas moved faster. He was larger than she remembered. He was stronger. He grabbed Sofia's arm and twisted. Pain shot through her shoulder. Emma screamed. Catherine reached for Emma's other hand. Sofia did the only thing she could do. She put her body between Catherine and her daughter. She fought. She twisted. She struck at Douglas's face with her free hand. He was not expecting her to fight. For 8 years, she had never fought back. She fought now. She felt her nails rake his cheek. She heard him curse. He raised his hand and struck her face with his palm, a backhanded blow that sent her spinning. She fell hard on the gravel path. Pain exploded across her shoulder. "Emma, run!" Sofia screamed. "Run!" Emma did not run. Emma froze for 1 second, her eyes wide, her mouth open. Then she bolted. She ran toward the main house. She ran like her life depended on it, because in that moment, she understood that it did. Catherine took 1 step after her. Douglas grabbed Catherine's arm. "Leave her," he hissed. "We have what we came for." Security heard the screaming. They heard it from the side gardens where 2 guards were checking the irrigation system. They heard it and they moved. They ran. By the time Douglas and Catherine reached their sedan, 2 guards in estate security uniforms were sprinting down the path. Douglas shoved Catherine into the car. He gunned the engine. The sedan fishtailed on the gravel spraying like bullets, and then it was gone, accelerating toward the front gates. 1 guard skidded to a stop beside Sofia. He was young, maybe 25, his face pale. He helped her up. Blood was dripping from her lip. Her cheek was swelling. Her hands were scraped raw where she had fallen. "Who were they?" the guard asked. Sofia could not answer. She could not breathe. She could only think of Emma. The second guard was already on his radio, his voice tight. Security breach at the cottage path. Vehicle fleeing northeast. 2 assailants. 1 victim injured. Emma Morales is safe in the main house. Requesting immediate dispatch to intercept vehicle. By the time Sofia made it to the main house, Emma was already running across the marble foyer. She collided with Sofia and wrapped her arms around her mother's legs, crying, screaming, asking if her mommy was okay, if the bad people were gone, if they were coming back. Sofia held her daughter. She could not answer. She could only hold her. Luca's SUV screeched to a stop outside the main house at 3:56 in the afternoon. He was out of the vehicle before it fully stopped. He was moving, not running, but walking with such controlled intensity that his bodyguard stepped back. He entered the main house through the front entrance. He saw Sofia standing in the foyer with Emma clinging to her. He saw Sofia's bleeding face. He saw the swelling on her cheekbone. He saw the scrapes on her hands. And something in his expression changed. It changed in the same way it had changed the night his brother had betrayed the family. It changed to ice. Marco, who had followed him inside, whispered to Dario, "Get everyone inside. Clear the foyer." Luca walked to Sofia. He knelt in front of her, his movements deliberate and careful. His eyes moved across her face like he was cataloguing every bruise. His hands lifted slightly, as if to touch her, then stopped. "Are you hurt?" His voice was quiet. It was the voice of a man holding something dangerous very still. Sofia nodded. She could not speak. "Is Emma safe?" Luca asked. "She's safe," Sofia whispered. Emma had her face buried in Sofia's hip. Sofia ran her hand over her daughter's hair. "She's safe." She ran. She got away. Luca stood. His jaw clenched. His hands formed fists. He looked at Marco. Who were they? Sofia closed her eyes. She could not lie anymore. She could not hide. She opened her mouth and she told him everything. She told him about Douglas. She told him about the basement apartment. She told him about 8 years ago when she was 22 years old and so desperate for any kind of safety that she had agreed to move in with a man who kept her locked away. She told him about the cigarettes pressed into her skin. She told him about the scars that covered her back like a map of hell. She told him about running. She told him about Catherine Mercer finding her at a bus station and offering her work, offering her hope, and instead offering her a different kind of cage. Luca's face did not change. His expression remained absolutely still. Sofia pulled off her sweater. She turned. She showed him her back. The scars ran in every direction. Some were small, like periods. Some were long, like sentences no one should ever have to read. Luca stared at them for a long moment. Then he looked away. When he looked back at her, his face had gone white. Then red. Then cold as stone. He told Marco one sentence, "Find them both. Bring them to me." That night, at 11 p.m., 12 men in black tactical gear moved through the city like ghosts. They found Douglas at the Desert Sun Motel outside the city limits. He was in room 227, second floor, pacing, still riding the adrenaline of the afternoon. When they kicked open the door, he tried to run. He made it 3 steps. They caught him in the parking lot. He collapsed onto the asphalt. He trembled like a cornered animal. He begged. "Please, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean to hurt her. I'll leave. I'll never come back. I swear, please." Marco zip-tied his hands without speaking. The other men moved like clockwork. Professional. Efficient. Emotionless. They found Catherine at the lodge 40 minutes later. She was in her office on the second floor, working through paperwork, completely unaware of what had happened at the estate. When she saw 12 men in tactical gear fill her office doorway, she tried to lock the door. Dario kicked it open. The lock shattered. Catherine screamed. "You can't do this. I have lawyers. I have rights. I will call the authorities." Marco's voice cut through her screaming, flat and final. "You should have thought of that before you touched his family." They dragged her down the stairs. The other women at the lodge, the ones who cleaned, the ones who served, the ones who had been trapped there, they watched from the hallways. One of them, a woman named Rita who had tried to escape 3 years earlier, stepped forward. She looked at Catherine in the eyes. Then she spit at her feet. At midnight, a black sedan with tinted windows arrived at the Bianchi estate. 3 men stepped out. They wore expensive suits and older faces marked with hard decisions. They were members of the Castelliano family. Luca had called in a debt, an old favor from years before. He had offered them something valuable, information about a federal investigation into their competitors. In exchange, he had asked for one simple thing: take Douglas Hale and Catherine Mercer. The Costianos had agreed. They had nodded. They had understood completely what Luca was asking, and they had understood completely what it meant. Douglas and Catherine were dragged from holding rooms to the black sedan. Douglas was still begging. Catherine was screaming. She screamed at Luca as they dragged her past the foyer where he stood watching. "You cannot do this. You cannot." Luca's voice stopped her cold. "I just did." The sedan pulled away from the estate. The taillights disappeared into the Nevada night. Within 48 hours, whispers would spread through the criminal underworld that they had been taken to a work camp in Eastern Europe, their identities erased, their lives now belonging to the Costianos' trafficking operations. The same fate Catherine had orchestrated for dozens of women. Sofia watched from the cottage window as the sedan disappeared. She heard the gravel crunch under the tires. She heard the quiet metal sound of the gate closing behind them. She heard silence. She heard the kind of silence that came after violence, after justice, after the world realigned itself. Luca returned to the cottage at 12:36 in the morning. He found Sofia in the kitchen. She was still wearing the clothes she had worn during the attack, her lip swollen, the bruises blooming dark across her cheekbone. She looked at him. She was trembling. "What happened to them?" Sofia asked. Luca's voice was steady. "They will never hurt you again." Sofia's knees buckled. Luca caught her as she fell. She sobbed into his chest. His arms wrapped around her. His chin rested on the top of her head. His men, waiting quietly in the main house, saw him like this, holding a woman like she was the most precious thing he had ever protected, and Marco whispered to Dario, "In 15 years I have never seen him like this." No matter how hard life gets, remember that after the rain, the sky clears. 1 year had passed since the night the sedan disappeared into the Nevada darkness. Sofia Morales stood in the floor-to-ceiling windows of her penthouse apartment on the 32nd floor of a Las Vegas high-rise, her reflection ghost-like against the glass. Behind her lay a city of lights and survival. Below her stretched the Strip, glittering with the kind of wealth that had once felt impossible to her. She was 30 years old now. Her hair fell in waves she had learned to style herself. Her suit, tailored charcoal gray wool, cost $3,000, hung perfectly on her frame. She had gained weight back, the kind that comes from eating 3 meals a day without counting calories. Her collarbones were no longer sharp as knife blades. Her hands, once raw and cracked from cleaning chemicals, were smooth. She wore a watch that cost more than a year of her old rent. The photo sat on the mantel beside Emma's school picture. Her late husband, Michael, photographed in sunlight when she was 22 years old and the world still felt open. Before Douglas. Before everything fractured. She touched the frame without lifting it, a ritual she performed most mornings. She whispered to the image, "I am doing what you would have wanted. Emma is safe. We are safe." The Las Vegas Property Development Summit had ended 3 hours ago. Sofia had negotiated a land purchase on behalf of Luca's legitimate hotel operations, $4.2 million for a vacant parcel that would become a boutique resort in the Arts District. She had stood in the conference room surrounded by men in expensive suits who made 6 figures annually, and she had walked out with the deal. The lead developer, a man named Richard Castelliano, had shaken her hand with genuine respect. He did not know she had been homeless less than 2 years ago. He did not know she could count the remaining dollars in her bank account down to the penny, $123,476. Not borrowed. Not given. Earned. Marco had driven her back to the penthouse. Dario waited with coffee. They still treated her with the formality of protocol, but the coldness had thawed into something like protection. She was no longer the woman Luca had pulled from the highway. She was director of operations for Bianchi Legitimate Holdings. She signed documents. She managed properties. She had an office on the 28th floor with her name on the door. Yet the hollow space in her chest had only deepened. 3 months. That was how long Luca had been distant. Business communications arrived through Marco. Video calls replaced dinners. Luca attended meetings from his study at the estate, his face on screens, his voice steady and professional. He had been present for the first week after Catherine and Douglas were taken. He had held her as she shattered. He had whispered promises of safety. Then he had begun the slow withdrawal, like someone pulling their hand away from a flame before they got burned. Sofia told herself it was better this way. She had built something independent. She did not need him anymore. She could stand alone. She repeated this in the morning. She repeated it at night. She was lying to herself, and the lie had grown heavy enough to drown in. The sun had set. The Las Vegas Strip blazed electric. Sofia stood watching the lights multiply into infinity. She had not heard from Luca in 4 days. Not since the property deal closed. She wondered if he knew she had closed it. She wondered if he even thought about her anymore. A knock at the door pulled her from the window. She opened it. Luca Bianchi stood in the hallway wearing a black coat that cost $15,000, a dark suit beneath it, his hair dark and silver at the temples, his eyes carrying the weight of 3 months of running. He looked older. He looked exhausted. He looked like a man who had been losing a battle with himself. "May I come in?" His voice was steady, but something trembled underneath it. Sofia stepped aside. The door closed behind him. They stood in her living room, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the city, modern furniture in shades of white and grey, everything expensive and empty. His eyes moved to the mantel, to Michael's photograph, to Emma's school picture. Then he looked at her. "I stayed away because I thought it was the right thing," Luca said. His voice was measured, careful. "I thought you needed space to build your own life, to not feel obligated to the man who helped you when you had nowhere else to go. I thought if I kept my distance, you would be free. I thought distance meant mercy." Sofia could not move. Could not breathe. Could not do anything but listen. "But I cannot do this anymore." His hands clenched at his sides. "I have carried this truth for 3 months and it is destroying me from the inside out. Every morning I wake up knowing you are in this building, and every night I go to sleep aching with the knowledge that you are alone. I told myself this was selflessness. It was cowardice." He stepped toward her. His eyes held hers. "I am in love with you. I have been since the night I found you on that frozen highway with Emma in your arms. Since the moment you stood in my office and demanded to work instead of accepting charity. Since every breath you have taken in my home, every smile you have given my men, every time you have shown courage when the world gave you every reason to break. I love you. I have loved you from the beginning, and I will not pretend otherwise anymore." Sofia's heart hammered against her ribs. The city lights blurred. "I do not expect you to feel the same," Luca continued, his voice dropping lower. "I do not expect anything. I simply needed you to know the truth before we both drown in the silence of unspoken things." Sofia crossed the room. She took his face in her hands. His skin was warm. His eyes closed as she touched him. "You think I stayed because of the job?" Her voice broke on the words. "You think I rebuilt my life here because of a salary and an office and business deals? You think I wake up every morning and do not immediately think of you? You think I do not lie awake at night remembering the way you held me, the way you promised me safety, the way you looked at me like I was worth saving?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I stayed because of you. Because you saw me at my lowest and you did not look away. Because you gave me a reason to stop running. Because I love you and I have been too afraid to say it, too afraid to want something so much that losing it could destroy me. Luca pulled her against him. When they kissed, it was desperate and aching, a year of longing released in a single moment. His hands tangled in her hair. Her fingers gripped his coat. The city spun outside the windows. Everything else disappeared. When they broke apart, Luca whispered, "I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel afraid again." Sofia said, "I am not afraid anymore." They stood together at the window, his arms around her from behind, both of them looking out at the lights and the frost-covered glass and the city below, finally home in each other. 3 months later, the estate cottage was strung with white lights and balloons in shades of pink and purple. Emma's 8th birthday party filled the main house with the sound of children laughing, running through rooms that had been silent for so long. Sofia stood in the kitchen watching her daughter move through the world with the kind of confidence that comes from being loved without condition. Emma wore a white dress. Her dark hair was braided. She had become a girl who smiled easily, who trusted without flinching, who believed that people kept their promises. Luca came up behind Sofia and wrapped his arms around her waist. He kissed her temple. He smelled like the cold night air and the coffee he had been drinking. His men were here, Marco with his wife, Dario with his children running alongside Emma through the halls. Maria brought out the cake, 3 layers of chocolate with strawberry filling. Emma blew out 8 candles and made a wish she would not speak aloud. The room filled with applause. Sofia caught Luca's eye across the space. He smiled, a real smile, unguarded, the kind his men whispered they had never seen before this woman entered his life. She smiled back, and in that moment, everything that had been broken felt like it had been reassembled into something stronger than it had been before. After the guests left, Sofia and Emma walked back to the cottage hand in hand. The sky was clear, stars sharp as diamonds, frost coating the pine trees like silver. Emma talked about the party, about the cake, about the presents waiting inside. Sofia listened to her daughter's voice and felt the small hand in hers and thought about the highway, the blizzard, the $78, the fear so large it had seemed to have no edges. Emma asked, "Mama, are we staying here forever?" Sofia looked at the cottage lights, at the main house where Luca was watching them from the window, his silhouette dark against the warmth inside. She squeezed Emma's hand gently. "Yes, baby. We are home." The story of Sofia Morales teaches us something we all need to remember: survival is not the same as living. Asking for help is not weakness. Sometimes the people who save us are the ones we never expected to find us at all. The storm will pass and you are far stronger than you think. If this story touched your heart, drop a like right now. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you never miss a story. Comment below, what would you have done in Sofia's position? Drop a heart emoji if you believe in second chances. New story drops tomorrow. Thank you for being here. You are not alone.